All right, everyone, let's talk about your next major assignment. I know it seems early to bring this up because we just got into a new section, but the section is a little bit shorter than the first section. So I just want to make sure we're already starting to think about it. And we're going to start doing some of the pre-production stuff relatively soon. So I just want to kind of get that going. So we're going to take a break from coding. And this next assignment really is about user experience and planning out the user experience of something. Okay. So what you guys are going to do is come up with an idea of an app. Okay. Let me stress, you are not programming an app. Okay. That is not what we're doing in this project. That would require me teaching you Objective-C or C# or some sort of language that would let you write an app that would work on the iOS or Android system. Instead, we are planning a prototype of an app, okay, and working on the user experience part with the idea is that this, in theory, would eventually be coded, okay? So you're working on the idea, not the literal code, okay? I just want to make that understood. So what you guys are going to do is come up with an idea. And we're going to kind of go through some of the elements of UX. So we're going to do a design brief, which we talked about today. You guys are going to do some research, which means you're going to interview people, whether that's interviews or surveys to get information about what to do for your project. How would this information fit into what your users would want and that sort of stuff. You're going to make a persona based on that information, research you collected. And then once you gather all this, then you're going to sort of set up the visual style and create what are called microinteractions, which we haven't talked about yet, so don't worry about that. But you're going to have microinteractions that help convey information in your project or your prototype to the user, okay? So just to kind of give you an idea, your final project is going to have 3 microinteractions. Once again, we haven't talked about what those are, what a microinteraction is yet. You will find out what that is, and that'll make more sense as as the course progresses. You're going to have an animated microinteraction. Once again, we haven't talked about what that is, but we will, and that'll make more sense. The project can have as many quote unquote pages, but you have to have at least 3 screens. Okay. And so what I mean by that is like, if I had, I don't know, like, let's say I had Instagram, like when I load up Instagram, the app, the first screen is like, where you see all the things. If I click and I go to another area, that's screen 2. And if I click on something else and it takes me to a different area, that's screen 3. So you have to have at least 3 screens. You don't have to do out the entire app, but you have to have at least 3 screens prototyped, essentially. Okay. So I know this sounds a little confusing. I'm just going to actually like show you some examples that students did. So these were from the last time I taught this course. So this is an app called Vid. So, you can see that it's meant to kind of look like a real app. It's not a real app. You cannot install this on your smartphone. It's just meant to look like one. But I can interact with it by scrolling. I did a micro interaction here where I can click and you can see it's like doing the little like symbol there, right? It's even animating. You might be hard to see, but I am. I click, this goes up, I'm scrolling. So these are like comments. I can send, I'm sending this to someone, blah, blah, blah. So this is kind of the idea. It's like this person came up with an idea. I think it's to sell like artwork. If I have to go back to the student's design brief about what this app is supposed to do, but it looks like kind of like kind of like an Etsy, independent artist kind of marketplace kind of thing. And so it's like you're kind of looking through it and you're liking it and sending it. And like all of this is information that the student got. They like did research. What would people want? How would people want to interact with this app? You can actually even load this prototype onto a smartphone and have people actually try it out. You can actually load it into the Figma app for your phone and actually try it out. And so it kind of, even though it's not a quote unquote real app, it kind of works in the way that a real app would. Same thing here. Let's do another one. I believe this student did a recipe related one. So it's like, here's the student's recipe. You can kind of scroll up and down. There's like a search feature. You can put in like, the ingredients you have. I think it's one of those sort of like, I have these ingredients in my fridge. What kind of meals can I make? Search, and then I get like, results. I can click on this one, it slides in. Okay. This goes back to the main page. This goes back to this page. So you can kind of see how this works. Once again, this is not a real app. There is no app that I'm aware of, at least by this student, called Your Recipes. It's just a prototype, right? But it kind of shows how it would look, what the general interface would look like. Does it do what you think it would do? If I go like, the point is, it's like, I always kind of say like an app should work in the way that like you don't need a manual. Like you should be able to download an app, load it, and have a general sense of like how things should work, right? If you're running into problems, it's like, well, then you're not conveying the information in a way that's maybe the best. And that's kind of, what we're doing here is like how to convey information to your target audience in a way that makes sense. Okay. So that is the general project. Hopefully that gives you an idea. What's going to be happening is you're going to be working on some of these UX elements pre-production. So you guys, I'm assigning a design brief. We talked about design briefs earlier, and I'll go over the design brief part in a second. That'll be due next week. And then you guys will also work on researching for your app. So whatever your app idea is, you'll research with real people, demographic information, psychographic information. Would they like this? What would make this app appealing to you as a user? That kind of stuff. From that, the idea is you'll take the information, build a persona. We'll talk more about personas in the future, and then create something called a style tile. Style tile is like a design. We haven't talked about this yet, but a style tile is kind of a design kind of overview. It's like, these are the type of colors, these are the type of fonts that would show up, that kind of thing. All right, so that's kind of the idea here. That's the project. Obviously, I'll talk more about this as time progresses, but I want you to start thinking about, what is the app that you want to build, right? Be any kind of app. I don't really have any limitations. You want to make a service app, like a utility app, like a, searching recipes. You want to make a game and do like kind of like, okay, my game starts and now there's a start screen and you can choose between these options or whatever, that's kind of the idea. The idea is, like I said, we're just planning the user experience. There's no programming in this. There's no programming in any of the things that I showed you. It's all just kind of planning out interactivity. Okay. Speaking of that, first step is I want you guys to build a project brief or design brief. Okay. Now, in this class, it's individualized because you're working independently as students. But in real life, if you were working on something like this, you're working in a team. Okay. I've done this kind of work where I worked for Genentech. I was a contractor, and they wanted me to design an interface for a medical app. This was a while back. And so I was in a meeting with like literally like, here's HR and here's, it wasn't HR, but like they had like a research division. They had like the doctors, they had marketing and all these kind of people. And we're in a meeting and we're just kind of like, we need a document that kind of summarizes like, what are we trying to do here, right? And so that's kind of the point of your design brief is you want to kind of, the way I kind of describe a design brief is like, if someone were to get hired and you're trying to like catch them up to speed on like what the project is, that's what the design brief, project brief is for. It kind of lays out the key points of what you're trying to do with this project. Okay. So the goal, one of them might be the goal of the project. What's the goal of this project? Well, you're trying to build an app, right? So that's like a goal. What are you actually delivering? In this case, the idea is eventually, if this was a real project, we would make a real app. In this case, if you're doing something else, it might be like making a website or making a game or making some sort of interactive thing that someone will work with. What's the timeline? That's a very important thing in real life. In a real world, time is money. How long is this going to take? Because that means how long you're going to have to pay people for, right? Or when will it be delivered? Who's the target audience? Who are the people who want this thing? If it's an app, who wants this app? Who's realistically going to download and use this app? Who's realistically going to use this thing? Okay. You can build this in any kind of program you want. If you want to make this in Figma or Photopea or Photoshop or Illustrator or whatever you want, that's kind of up to you. I would, build this out. This is kind of, I'm just showing you some examples. Just submit it as some sort of basic, either JPEG or PDF file, and this will be due. So today is the 6th. It'll be due about a week and a half. It'll be due the Friday after next. Okay? If you have any questions, feel free to email me at dhurwitz@chabotcollege.edu or talk to me, send me a message or talk to me during office hours. Okay?